I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Ralph. Yeah.
Listen, you know we got a really big event coming up in June.
Well, I've heard about that, and I'm quite flabbergasted, quite frankly, because when Edgar first talked about it, Edgar Lane, my very good friend, and I pictured it as being just a get-together more than anything else, and I'm really surprised at just how far you've all gone with this, and I certainly appreciate it. It's wonderful.
Forward to seeing everybody?
I'm looking forward very much, and I think that's probably the big thing, Ralph, about it, is that getting to see some of the guys that I haven't seen for many years, and hopefully a lot of them will be former students and former employees, and just getting together. We don't get together a lot in this day and age, and it's just going to be so nice just to be with all those guys.
Don't get too excited.
No, right. Well, I know there'll be a pretty good number. I'd be kind of optimistic, even if they want to throw darts at me or whatever, you know.
What, you heard about that already?
Yeah.
You didn't hear about the dunking tank, though, did you?
No, I haven't heard. I haven't got much detail, quite frankly. My son said to me the other day. He said, "Dad, you'd never believe," he said, "what they've got planned for you."
Right.
And he wouldn't tell me, which I was glad in a way.
That's right.
But I could tell he was itching to tell me, but he didn't.
I'm really looking forward to
So I don't
seeing
know.
This is going up on the web, by the way.
Well, you intimated that the other night, and that's really something too. And you were saying that I guess people can feed in their remarks into the web, and we were jokingly saying that that could be a little scary, but we'll take our chances, I guess.
Well, Don, we're really looking forward to it, so we'll see you in June.
Sure will, Ralph. I'll be there. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I saw your name on the list. Tell my granddad there should be Don, I remember the first time that I ever met you, and you sent me flying. And about 15 minutes after I was talking to you, I was out on the runway, and the instructor said, "Push that red knob further forward." And a few minutes after that, I was changed for life, and I've never been the same since. And it's all your fault. How you doing, Kev?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Just one quick announcement. You hear the bell ring, there's an announcement coming. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest of honor for this evening, Mr. Don McClure.
Buddy, when you get older, you'll learn not to do this when you walk in public.
Gentlemen, to introduce to you our entertainers for this evening, Les Arsenault, the parents, Emily Arsenault, Bella Arsenault, as well as their children, daughter Fernand Gauguin, with her husband Richard Gauguin, as well as their son Martin Gauguin, daughter Linda Small, along with her daughters Vanessa Small and Natasha Small, son Gerald Arsenault, with his sons Patrick Arsenault and Mark Arsenault. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to get the main part of the festivities off this evening to a good start, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself to some of you who may not know me. My name is Larry Vance, alumni 1967. And an instructor at the Flying Club from 1969 to 1978, more than most people could stand it. And of course, we're here tonight to honor Mr. Don McClure, celebrate his induction into the Aviation Hall of Fame. I would like to start off, by the way, to thank the organizers for inviting me to do the MC job here this evening. That was a great honor. I appreciate that very much. And I would also like to recognize the organizing committee. And I'll read their names off. Everett McQuinn, George Doerr, Jim Sellers, Graham Ogilvy, Harry Dillon, Dave Wall, Vernon Gray, Jim Barnes, Mike DeWaron, Brad Mundell, Ralph Pritchard, Peter Fisher, and a special thank you. I'd like to say a special thank you to the main organizer, Mr. Edgar Elaine. That's good. Sorry if I was shouting into your ears there. I've been asked to make sure that you realize that the food is going to be continuous. There's a continuous service from 7 o'clock until 8:30. So you'll have lots of time for munches. And as I had mentioned a bit earlier, the evening has been designed so that there's not seating for everybody in the room. It's designed to be a mix and mingle. So it's a relaxed atmosphere. We'd like you to move around. We'd like you to talk to your old friends and old acquaintances and people that you knew from years ago and meet some new friends perhaps. We were anticipating to have Al Lilly, and Al was born on July 19, 1910. His birthplace was Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and he was inducted in the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame in 1984. The quote from the induction ceremonies into the Aviation Hall of Fame from Mr. Al Lilly read, "The application of his superior skills in test flying, leading to vital improvements in many aircraft during war and peace, have been of outstanding benefit to Canadian aviation." Alexander Lilly had an unblemished career of 35 years as an instructor, test pilot, transport pilot, and aviation executive. In 1932, he joined the RCMP while on detachment at Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. He advocated the use of ski or float-equipped aircraft to replace dog teams and canoes. The RCMP later transferred Lilly to headquarters in Ottawa, but since this would remove him from flying opportunities, he resigned and went to England to join Imperial Airways, the predecessor of British Overseas Airways Corporation. When World War II broke out, he returned to Canada and became chief flying instructor with the BCATP and eventually joined Ferry Command in Montreal. In this position, he flew several types of aircraft, including the Hudson, Ventura, the Boston, the C-47 Dakota, B-24 Liberator, the Catalina, the Boeing B-17, the Lancaster, and the Mosquito. On August 8, 1950, Lilly flew the first Canadian-manufactured F-86 Saberjet and gained the distinction of being the first in Canada to break the sound barrier. So we would have liked to have had Mr. Lilly here this evening, but as I mentioned, he couldn't make it for health reasons. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce the first, maybe Don will regret this, because the first thing we have on the agenda is the first roaster of the evening. And a roaster extraordinaire that he is. Somebody that we all know and love who's been around aviation in these parts for many years, Mr. Mike DeWeron.
How you doing, folks? Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody see me? Who built this damn thing? Okay, we're here to honor roast Don, and that we're going to do throughout the evening. And Don, just sit back and enjoy it. There's nothing you can do about it. You've totally lost control of this thing. When they asked me if I could possibly say a few words about Don, I started thinking about how I was going to do this. And what I thought would be maybe a little bit different would be to sort of look at Don in four major areas. First of all, as an instructor. For those of you who may have had Don as an instructor at one time, you probably realize that he was pretty strict at what he did. But the other thing about Don is he was not above a practical joke once in a while. And I remember this one particular individual that Don was doing with an instructor's rating years ago, a fellow by the name of Parkinson, had a nasty habit of taking forever to do a walk around. And as you can well appreciate with Don's sort of warped sense of speed of getting things done, he didn't appreciate the guy taking 20 minutes doing a walk around. So this one day, a couple of the boys decided, mosey up to Don and said, "Don, we're going to chalk his wheels after he's finished doing his walk around." So Don said, "Sure, go ahead." So Don gets in, the two Dons get in the Cherokee, they close the door, Don's sitting there, and of course they come along and they sneak up behind the Cherokee and they chalk the wheels. So Parkinson starts the airplane, it doesn't move. So finally shuts it down and they both crawl out of the airplane, and Don, to his credit, just tore a strip off Parkinson for not doing a proper walk around. The other way we can look at Don is a supervisor, all right? And a supervisor extraordinary he was. I know this firsthand because when I first started working at the college, or at the club, years ago, I was a dispatcher. And one of the jobs I had, of course, was to move airplanes. And as we know, Don enjoyed having airplanes moved with great rapidity. And I knew that I learned a very valuable lesson from Don at this stage of the game, because I quickly figured out the fact that you did not have to be on site to properly supervise. And the reason I figured this out was that on a beautiful, balmy Saturday afternoon, airplanes hadn't been in the air for about 20 minutes, and guess what? The phone rings. And in those days, you didn't have one of them little Ritos tell you who was calling, but you could tell by the clock. It's 20 minutes, the airplane's been on the ground, I know who's on the phone. Right? Next thing you pick up the phone, there was no hello or nothing, and say, "Why is OXJ still on the ground?" Now, how he knew this was totally beyond me, but anyway, he could figure it out from way back. Right? The other thing you got to look at, Don, is basically as a boss, if you will. I won't get into the gory details, but one day after I'd been working for him for about 6 or 7 years, I ended up with a Cherokee in a field north of Shediac Bridge. After much grunting and groaning, we managed to get the airplane into another field, and we took off, and I arrived basically just after sunset and parked the airplane in front of the hangar. And fortunately, no damage to the airplane, but it was a tad bit dirty. And Don, being Don, had not left till that airplane was back at the airport. That was all there was to it. So I remember that evening, he just kind of looked at the airplane and sort of didn't really smile or nothing, and just sort of said, okay, that's good, and we both went home. So next morning, the boys take it in, they're doing the washing and everything, and Don happened to come out and was looking for something. So he couldn't find it. So I said, well, I think it's over here, Don. So I found it and gave it to him. He's turned around and did his usual 180 and started warping back into his office and stopped mid-stride, turned around, he said, 2 days in a row, you earned your pay, I guess we'll have to keep you. And the other thing about Don that I always thought was he was a great businessman. And we knew this because, for those of you who probably know Don, have heard about the story, the infamous story where he tried to get the Vachon cake man to go flying in a Cherokee, because he just happened to look out the window when Don was walking by. Cherokee on a ram says, hey, you, do the walk around. We had to point out to Don that, no, Don, he's not a student, he's the Vachon cake man. All right, he's delivering cakes, okay? But the best one to me was the time that there was a Cherokee sitting out on the ramp, student sitting there, and Don pointed at the student as he would and say, airplane, get up there and do a walk around. So kid goes out there, does a walk around, jumps in it, cranks it up, things airborne. When the owner arrived, and it was a kid in a cross country from the St. John Flying Club. And Don, being Don, charged the kid for the hour of flying. But to put this all in perspective, I gotta give it to you straight here, folks. I gotta really, straighten things out with Don here after many, many years. What I can't figure out, all right, is I've heard people say, well, Don was very busy. Well, I look at it and I compare the club of 20 years or 30 years ago with the college of today, and I mean, one of the things that Don used to do was he used to handle all the student mail. So when people would phone in or send a letter saying, dear Moncton Flying Club, I'd like to be a student, Don would sit there at that typewriter, and if you've seen him, he'd just be banging away at that typewriter. He'd get all the letters out. We have a marketing manager do that now. And he would handle all the business deals, dealing with the SOs and the Irvings and everybody else. And we have a business manager do that now. And then he would also have just glorious fights with transport, and whoever the inspector was at the time of the day. And I know many times I've seen Doug McLaughlin walk in, and Don would immediately come out with a dictionary and slap it on the counter and say, okay, start talking, Doug, I can understand you now. But now we have a CFI to do that, the DFO, Director of Flight Ops. And finally, Don just basically used to run the place, and I do that now. So the way I figured this out, folks, is Don was doing the work of 4 people. And when you get right down to it, you can't honestly do the work of 4 people. So I figure he was just doing a half-assed job at everything he did. So the way I see it, all right, when you get right down to it, Don, if you'd have really put your mind to it, just think of the name you could have made for yourself. Anyway, folks, have a good evening. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. We're here to pay honor to Don and Don from all the folks at the college who you've set us up many years ago and continue to have a very strong influence. Congratulations, you deserve it.
And I appreciate that very much. I have a message here for Don from one of his colleagues, Mr. Bob Bateman, who couldn't be here tonight, from Prince Edward Air. And I'll read it to you. It says, hello, Don. It's Bob Bateman here. It's Friday noon, Moncton time. I'm in Toronto, and I wanted to speak to you to offer you my heartfelt congratulations on your great achievement. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to attend the celebration tomorrow evening, and I regret that very much. I'm away on business, and it's unfortunate. I'm in Toronto as we speak, and won't be back until Sunday evening. But wanted to be there to share praying for you in the honor that you deserve with all your friends, associates, and admirers. So forgive me for being away. I know that I apologize for that, but it's something I couldn't avoid. Hopefully we'll speak in the very near future. Have fun and revel in it. It's been a lifetime of achievement. Thank you, sir, and goodbye. That's from Bob Bacon and Prince Edward Air. Also a message from Ray Stevens, CAHA. It says, "Hi Don, it's Ray Stevens. Sorry I can't be there today to support you, but I certainly wish you all the best and my congratulations. It's long overdue." From Ray Stevens, CAHA. And now without further hesitation, ladies and gentlemen. Don, that's not your table talking, I hope. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the second roaster of the evening. Don, you're going to enjoy this one. An old colleague of yours, a former employee of yours, and a colleague and instructor of mine. I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Ace Morrison.
Thank you, Larry. Well, this is quite an honor for me. I was called the other evening by Edgar Lane and asked to partake in these festivities here this evening. And I still can't figure out why he asked me, because Don Rickles I'm not. I stand up to meet to a group of people I've never done before in my life, but I'm going to give it a stab here anyway. I first had the opportunity of meeting Don 40 years ago at the end of this month. I was a naive little guy from Newcastle, New Brunswick, and I came down here to take a... Everywhere you go, you find somebody from Newcastle. Anyway, I came down here to take a flying scholarship through the Air Cadet League. And I'm going to get this one right off the table, right off the bat, because I'm not going to give Don a chance to, because he already did it to me at his retirement. And it's an amazing thing about Don, you know. This is the only guy that I know in the entire world who retires, and every other year that another celebration comes up for him. But anyway, the thing that amazed me about Don when I come down here, and I've never seen anything like this before in my life, and I was happy about one thing about it, because in high school in Newcastle, I was in middle and long distance running. Don McClure was the only guy that I ever tried to walk beside, and I had to actually run. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. So this particular evening, I came down from flying. I've been up doing crosswind landings with a chaplain named Peter Glenn. I don't think Peter's here tonight, but Peter taught me crosswind landings that particular morning. And that evening, we came out, and I did an hour or so of crosswind landing. I came in, signed the airplane back in and everything, and if you remember the old flying club that we used to fly out of, in the dispatch room there was a Coke machine there, flat tabletop one, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden the whip comes through the door from the lounge. Now I don't know what happened to him there that particular day, but he went through, not even touching the floor, out through the hangar to where these two airplanes were parked. He come back in again, he says, "You! In that airplane, get flying." So scared little old me, out I go, and I jump into this airplane, put the park brake on, do the walk around, get back in, put the park brake on again, start the airplane, and within about 30 seconds, I was starting to develop small colts out of Don's big colts. The airplane had been grounded by Tommy, and Don and I didn't realize it, and none of the brakes worked in the airplane. And in that one swoop of the propeller, I wiped out 2/3 of McClure's fleet. And that was the first time that I think that Don came across the crisis, and that's how we developed with he and I. Well, I worked with Don starting in the mid-60s right up until I was hired by Eastern Provincial Airways in 1970. And during that particular time of working with Don, I developed a very, very personal relationship with him. And one of the most phenomenal things about Don was his uncanny ability to do business. The other thing was that I noticed about him was the skill he had with people. One of the third traits that Don had was his knack of talking. it was again, it was one of the first times I ever come across anybody in my life who talked about Mach .83 with gusts up to Mach 10. And after a while, I began to realize that when Don was an infant, and unlike the rest of the children at his age back at that time, he had to be vaccinated with a gramophone needle. During these years in private conversations with Don, I learned that his personal hero in aviation was Charles Lindbergh. And if you remember back in those early days, there used to be an aero commander there. It was amazing how every time you turn around, Don was taking the aero commander out over water. So I think he was living his hero's wish. But you know, another trait started to develop for me, and I started to notice that actually he had another hero. And it was one of the movie comedians of that time, Jack Benny. And he even combed his hair the same as Jack, straight back. And I finally figured out the reason why he combed his hair straight back is because he didn't want to use the comb too much to wear it out, so he'd have to dip into his pocket to take money out to buy a brand new one. You know, I still think Don's got the same comb. The only difference between Don and Jack Benny was that when Jack Benny sat down to meet his first daughter, he went and he put it in a frame, put it in his office, so he could flaunt it at people when they walked in. Not Don. Don still got his first penny. He went and took that and he put it into a block of concrete, hid it so nobody could find it. He's got a 24-hour security system guarding it. You know, before Don came to the Moncton Flying Club, Don worked at Swift's, and he worked there to make a living like a lot of us for our families. And there was a story going around about that time about this young salesman who went out to the back reaches of Albert County. He was driving around one day and came across an old country store out there. Some little village or some little crossroad, I don't know what it is, and it was owned by two old guys. At the same time, as Don was working there, Swift came out with a brand new dog food called Hard. And Don told these two old guys, his sizzle for selling to them was that, you know, this is so good, he said, that human beings would eat it and like it. The two old guys' eyes lit right up, and they said to Don, he said, if you eat that can of dog food, we'll buy a case of dog food from you. And guess what? Don sat down and ate a can of dog food. He said, like a case of dog food. Some guys will do anything to make the buck. But you see, Don's thriftiness with the dollar was also very, very important when he came to work at the Moncton Flying Club. When Don took over the Moncton Flying Club, it was in a horrendous indebtedness. And I believe it was almost ready to bankruptcy, Don, wasn't it, when you took it over? Don's great ability of taking a penny and squeezing $1,000 out of it will go down in history. There's no two ways about it. And he was able to take the Moncton Flying Club at that time and then slash it into the Moncton Flight Center and turn it into one of the most prosperous and successful flight centers, not only in Moncton and the province of New Brunswick, but the country of Canada and around the world. And he did this over a period of about 2.5 decades. Going along with that in his thriftiness, this chap was so thrifty that I don't think that he bought a pen in his entire career. It was a known thing at the time that if you were going to go up to his office or you were going to go up to the flight dispatch, make sure that you either hid your pen or you had it chained to your person, because Don somehow or another would get that pen away from him. A lot of us were feeling like we were truck drivers with those big chain wallets that we had, so they used to have so nobody would steal from them. But anyway, I do believe that Don bought one pen in his career, if I remember correctly. We had a bad day up at the Flying Club one day. It was raining and there was no flying going on. And Don had to go into town to see the club's lawyers to sign some documentation. And while he was in there, he happened to put the pen that he signed the documentation with in his pocket. And like somebody else had mentioned before, Don always came back up to the flying club before he went home to make sure that everything was okay and everything was lined up for the day before. And he was showing us his pen and how proud he was for this pen. But he got snookered on it. About a week later, the bill from the lawyer showed up, and guess what was on the itemized items on that? One pen. I forget what it was, $1.50 or $2.25. And Don actually paid for his first pen in his career. The oddity about this is that I think George Bingham was about the only chap that was able to snooker Don in one of the departments that Don actually did. Don always sat down with us as we worked for him and told us how honored and how privileged we were to work for him. And it always seemed to happen around the time when we were going to go in the office and sit down to talk to Don about getting a pay raise. Well, people, I'm going to tell you, I think Don was the only guy that I ever worked for in my entire life. When you go in and talk to him, not only did he try to talk you out of the pay raise that you were going in to get, but he tried to get you to agree to take a pay cut. And the boot, when you came out of the meeting with him, you actually felt good as if you gained something. But putting all kidding aside here, ladies and gentlemen, we're here this evening to honor a very special friend of mine. And I am so happy for Don that what has occurred to him has occurred. It's been a long time coming for him. And I thank Don from the bottom of my heart for his friendship and for his family friendship over the 40 years that I've known and associated with him. And you know, I think it is quite fitting that we're gathered here this evening to honor him in one of the highest prestigious honors that can be ever offered to anybody in their aviation career, and that's the induction into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame. I want to thank you, Don. I want to thank you for being there when you were. And I want to thank you for being my friend. God bless you. Now, can you imagine? Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to introduce our honored guest of the evening. Our honored guest of the evening, Mr. Don McClure. Hey, what's going on over there? What's going on over there? Keep those people away from Don. Hey, I understand that Don's being on. What grounds are you arresting Mr. Don McClure over there? What's the evidence in this matter? What's happening here? Don is being arrested. Come up here, you guys. Get up here. Tell me what's happening.
So it's Special Agent Ralph Pritchard from CSIS.
Sit down and be quiet.
All right, settle down, settle down. We brought a big paddy wagon with us. We've got room for 201. Quite a crowd, Don. Looks like you pulled the wool over just about everybody's eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Special Agent Ralph Pritchard, and this is my partner, Special Agent George Dewar. As you just heard, we're from the Canadian Intelligence Security Organization. That's the equivalent to the CIA in Canada, if you don't know. Now, most of you know us in our undercover aliases and persona as private pilots, aircraft engineers, working for various departments of the federal government. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to inform you that a warrant has been issued for Don's arrest as a result of a 40-year investigation of his activities. These are serious crimes. No laughing over there at the fajita table. I personally have been on the case since 1984. They shipped me down here from Ontario to look into this activity. Now, Mr. McClure has been very successful in avoiding self-incrimination right up until his trip to Vancouver 2 weeks ago. Now, in order to avoid any confrontation with you, his apparent friends, I'm prepared to disclose only a small fraction, just a small fraction of his crimes, which could put him behind bars for the next 250 years. Now, a real break came in the case just 2 months ago when Mr. McClure allowed me to look through some old photos that he carelessly kept as souvenirs. Next slide, please. This document, almost illegible, but something about it told me I should look into it. I recognize the emblem in the top left-hand corner. It's the German emblem. So I sent it to our forensic laboratories for further investigation. What we found in the upper right-hand corner completely took me by surprise. Next slide, please. For those of you that can read German, I believe our chef could possibly translate. It says birth certificate. Born this 15th day of June, 1902, one Donald McClure. He was born in Hamburg, Germany. Now, you may think this was his father, but it wasn't. Other documents have corroborated this evidence. Now, the Kluring family spent the next 12 months in Hamburg, or 12 years I should say, until the First World War broke out when they moved to Berlin. This is Don at the age of 13, shortly after he enlisted as a cadet in the German military. Now, Kluring's taste for combat, along with his cunning wit, soon landed him a prestigious position with the German Luftwaffe as the youngest pilot in Germany's history then and now. He is seen in the next photo standing beside his favorite killing machine. Don, what's the name of that plane? What type of plane is that, Don? Yeah, see? He knows. Next slide, please. Mr. Kluring stowed away on a Pakistani potato boat, destined for Canada 7 years later, and took the name of Donald McClure. Donald S. McClure. No immigration papers were ever found under his real name. Now, in every employment application following that date received from our department and went over with a fine tooth comb, purchased with real money, Don, Mr. McClure, as he was then known, had always indicated they had served in the Canadian military, and even went so far as to attach the photo to every one of his applications. Again, we took this photo to the forensic laboratories for investigation and had the insignia on his cap magnified in hopes of finding out just what regiment he pretended to serve in. What we saw as a result of this shocked us. For those of you who have served with that fine army, I apologize. Mr. McClure wandered from one job to the next like a wandering Romanian gypsy until he landed his position at the Moncton Flying Club in 1959 using forged documents. Another one of our special agents, Special Agent Brad Mundell, found the following drawing and McClure's diary in an old crate that was hidden above the old hangar. Next slide. In his diary, McClure had written about his passion to take over the Moncton Flying Club, then all other clubs across Canada, and eventually the world. Now this photo is probably familiar to a lot of you in this room. It represents one of those clues that an investigator always dreams about landing in his lap but rarely does. This photo was the old flying club, the actual day of the fire that claimed the entire hangar and its contents. Now, during the post-fire investigation, the only conclusion was that it was started somewhere inside the hangar. With this in mind, we sent the photo once again to our wonderful forensic laboratories. Next slide. Here we see the photo at 2 times magnification. Nothing evident there. Next slide. At 10 times. Again, nothing. But here, in this 20 magnification, we start to see a little light in the bottom right-hand corner of the dark hangar. At 50x, the light gets bigger, but nothing else is clear. So we take it to full 100x and nothing. Now, at that time, that's all the technology that we had. It was a clue that had evaded us. However, 2 months ago, with a new budget, we purchased a new night vision filter for our magnification resequencer and then enhanced this photo. Slide. He wasn't taking any chances. We all know the result of this one strike. As most of you know, it was extremely difficult to borrow money from a bank to pay for flying lessons. Are any students back in the 60s and 70s? Remember that? There just wasn't any collateral. The bank had nothing that they could pull back if they needed to. Now, Mr. McClure was not going to let this little snag hinder his greed for profit. He encouraged his would-be students to go to the bank and get a loan for a new car. Once they purchased the car, they would drive it to Moncton, sell it to Mr. McClure at fire sale prices, of course, and then pay through the nose for flying lessons. The next photo shows Don moonlighting in the used car business. Next slide. This poor fellow drove all the way up from Texas, as you can see on the license plate. Now, Mr. McClure has always fancied himself as a sailor. In the days before motorboats became a reliable source of navigating the waters around his cottage in Shediac, Mr. McClure relied on modified sailboats. Even on days where there wasn't any wind whatsoever, Mr. McClure, with the help of air cadets and students, of course, would be invited all out to go sailing with them, only to end up rowing his boat. Obviously, you've recognized the now infamous whip that he's holding. And of course, this contradicts the long-held theory about how he originally picked up the story of the whip with the Vashon Bakery. Now, most of you know that Mr. McClure has been all over the world looking for pilots to fill up his classes in his airplanes. One year, he even ended up in Libya. What was only to be a one-week sortie ended up to be 2 long weeks. Now, McClure's story to the Moncton Flying Club board members was that he was detained by the authorities under house arrest. He couldn't make any calls. Well, as a result of recent changes in the Libyan government and the now infamous access to information, we were able to get a photo of exactly what this McClure fellow was up to. Gaddafi, Hussein, the Ayatollah, the Shah. For those of us that were around the club in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we all know that McClure was enamored with these tomahawks, these Piper tomahawks. It wasn't the sleek look of it or the way the airplane flew or handled. It was because they only burned 4 gallons an hour. According to a deal that Don had at that time with the MFC board members, anything that he could save less than 7 gallons an hour, he could put into his own pocket. Thus, my friends, is the reason for the tomahawk. You can talk to Don after he gets out of prison. The only problem was, as time went on, young students were now no longer the average pilot of 170 pounds. They were getting quite beefy, 200, 210, 220. The only way that you could fly these things if you flew them without any gas. I know I did one circuit, had to come down and refuel. Now, McClure, not to be outdone, struck a deal with some of his new friends from the previous photo to smuggle tomahawks out of the country. Told them it was a good way to build up their air force. In the next photo, you can see this fella right here carrying out his plans. Anthony from Russia. What's the fella's name next to you there, Don? Would it be Brezhnev? Unfortunately, the Russians eventually had all the tomahawks they needed and left Don with a few left over. Now, McClure put his top mechanic on the job, Tommy Gallant. Is Tommy here tonight? No? Well, his sidekick, Jacques, is here, and I know he helped. He put them to work to see what they could do to resolve this incessant problem with carrying the heavy students. In the next slide, McClure is seen doing a low pass over Shediac Bay with Tommy and Jacques' prototype. They just couldn't get rid of that T-tail, no matter how many other tails they had. The project was abandoned when Esso, their supplier of fuel, found a mysterious underground pipe that McClure had secretly attached to their main tanks. Now, back in the 70s, word about the potential of steroids reached McClure. He quickly instituted a program to adopt its use in order to improve pilots' reaction time, increase their memory retention, and of course their overall performance. This next slide shows McClure congratulating a few of his students at one of the MFC's annual Wings Parade. Now you may recognize the fella too to the left of Don, and I should tell you there is an ongoing investigation into his activities. You know, McClure often boasted about the Yorath Trophy. Huh? How many times have you heard that? 16 times in a row. According to his story, this trophy was awarded to the most proficient flying school in Canada. There he is, accepting it for the 16th time. A bit of a yawn on his face, I would say. Again, we sent the photo to our forensic laboratories and had the trophy blown up. Next slide. Mr. McClure, pretty darn impressive. So. Now, in the next photo, you will see the real photo. There it is. The actual photo with the two bowlers left and right. Now, I think in one of the previous roasters we heard Mike Laron talk about Don was everything, right? Marketing guy, PR guy, complaint guy, and everything else. Well, he was also his own photo retouch guy. And he retouched this photo and turned it into the next photo, as you see. All he did, if we could just go back and forth, look at that. He took the head off and he took one of the legs off so it looked like wings.
You're framed.
Next photo, please. Do you recognize the fellow on the left? You know, we've heard it already, Don's always looking for a way to make money. And he had a willing workforce, excuse me, of young students. So in the 1980s, he built and operated a casino in the basement of the dorm. Now there's Don dealing blackjack on the left if you can't make it out. What you can't see, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, is the students in the back, in the dark, cooking those meals, serving bar, washing the floor. It's a disgusting thing. The activity that I was alluding to earlier that allowed us to secure this search warrant tonight was carried out and perpetrated 2 weeks ago in Vancouver while Don was up there receiving yet another Yorath trophy. No, I guess that's the induction, exactly. While there, he carried out this, one of Canada's most heinous crimes, jaywalking. Here he is, right in the heart of Vancouver, in Gastown. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you'll agree with me now that Mr. McClure deserves to be put away for a long, long time. We'll be taking Mr. McClure with us now. Thank you.
Just a minute, Mr. Pritchard. This may be the information I've been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, please be calm. Please be calm. This is the information I have been waiting for. 2 weeks ago, I got wind of the ongoing investigation into Don's alleged criminal activities. Although I didn't know they were quite this extensive. Nevertheless, I wanted to see if there was some way I could help an old friend. I went to the federal government to inquire about a pardon, but due to ongoing priorities, I was turned down. I then contacted a senior official from the CIA, a friend of mine, to see if he could offer any help. The only thing that he could think of was to seek a pardon from Gandhi. In the 1940s, the CIA faked to death and has had him hidden for the past 50 years. Agent Pritchard, would you please load this up on the computer?
Reluctantly, yes.
Listen, I only have a couple of minutes. There may be people watching. I did what you asked at great peril. To my own safety, I hope this is what you were looking for. Last week, a troop of Green Berets followed the Karachi Trail into the Himalayas. The men met with hardship along the way as sub-zero temperatures claimed the life of one of their own. The mountains were high and the air was thin. Their goal, to meet with Gandhi, who had been in hiding since his staged death in the 1940s, would not defeat them. I hope this McClure fellow appreciates the efforts of those brave men.
So, sir, you come to me to give forgiveness to this Rip the Dawn guy for all the things he's done. Well, we shall see. Oh, he done that. He burnt the clubhouse. All by himself, he burnt the clubhouse. Well, that's heavy done. Oh, goodness. He even acted as a Canadian when he wasn't a Canadian. And he tried to be a pilot when he wasn't a pilot. How many people have he cheated so far in his life? And you tell me he's still alive? Nobody done away with him so far. Oh, jaywalking. Bad. Bad. Don McClure. Bad man. Bad man. No, no, no. Bad man. Too many bad things. Well, we shall see what we can find in the old good book to give him a pardon. I cannot find anything to forgive him in this book. I think we'll have to go all the way to the back of the book. That's where all the serious stuff adds up. I think maybe we can find something for this Whip the Dawn boy. Oh, I see. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Ram, we have finally found something. Hare Ram, and we will pray to Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, to forgive Don for all of his bad things he done in his life. Mr. Don, you are forgiven. You are forgiven. Do good in your life from now on. Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
So it's truly now my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to call upon our guest of honor, Ladies and gentlemen and friends, and I think I can say that all of you are my friends, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight. And even though I have been subjected to a little bit of gross exaggeration, everybody knows I'm very generous, and certainly these off remarks I'm going to try to forgive. I'm going to consult with my Redeemer and see if they can't be forgiven. First, let me promise this is not going to be a long speech. This is not a night for speeches. This is a night for fun, and we will keep it that way. You all remember certain dates in our lives. I'm going to get serious now. You all remember certain dates in our lives, and I guess the date that will always be special to me was the date of November the 6th, 2001, when John Lawson, chairman of the Aviation Hall of Fame, Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, called me and said, "Don, I have some wonderful news for you." And it was then that I learned that I was to be inducted into this elite group of airmen. The induction ceremony in Vancouver on May the 25th was one of the highlights of my life. It was carried out with professionalism and class. Over 469 people attended this induction, most of them all from the aviation world, and it was very special to me because most of my family were there that night. One of my daughters was unable to attend, although it was close up to the last minute, and regrettably she wasn't able to be. Other than that, all my family were there, and that meant a lot to me. 2 days later, all of us went up to, including my daughter who wasn't there, went up to the Wetaskiwin to the Aviation Hall of Fame, and we, if any of you haven't been there, it's a wonderful exhibit, wonderful museum, and where my family were able to see the panels, the 4x8 panels of all the inductees in the hall, and incidentally there was 168 names there and panels. And although my particular panel was not there, it hadn't been constructed at that time, they could visualize what it would be like when it was formed. However, in many respects, tonight is even more special to me. More important because, more important than the actual induction ceremony, because tonight I could rub shoulders with a lot of people who have been part of my life, who have been associated with me all through the years. I want to take this opportunity to thank Edgar Lane and his committee who conceived this whole idea of this night and have carried it out so splendidly. If there is a few hitches, forgive, because in every endeavor of this type, there is always little things that might happen to go wrong. I don't think much has gone wrong. But if there is, keep it in mind that when you conceive something of this magnitude, then of course it opens up a window for things happening. But however, I think largely we can say it's been a very successful evening. When the great actor Kirk Douglas was being presented with an award at the Academy Awards a few years ago, and remembering that Kirk Douglas had a very serious stroke, he looked out at the audience and he said, "I see my 4 sons here tonight." And he said, "They're proud of the old man." Now I can't exactly say those same words, but I can look out and I can say these words, and I'm going to have to read them because I might slip up. Let me get with it here. I can say I look out at the audience tonight and I see my 4 daughters. They're all here tonight. Nancy, who went through great stress and endeavor to be here. And I'd have to elaborate on that sometime to all of you, how difficult it was for her to be here. But she's here and got here at the last moment. And she is here. My one son is here. Now let me read who else is here among my family. And if I don't know who conceived the table for my family, but didn't make it big enough. I have here tonight, besides the ones I've mentioned, I have 5 grandsons, 3 granddaughters, 2 sons-in-law, 1 daughter-in-law. You can see why I got to read this, because it's really screwed up. And 2 granddaughters-in-law, whatever that is. And I know they're proud of this old man. And if my late wife Pauline could be here, she'd be even prouder. I've been part of the Airman's World now for over 60 years, 62 years to be exact. And though there were times when things went wrong and I wondered if it was all worthwhile, tonight I no longer wonder. I know that no matter what went wrong, it was all worthwhile. There's an old saying that the measure of a man's success is not the materialistic things he obtains in life or gathers in life, but it's the friends that he makes. And as I look out here tonight, I feel a measure of success in seeing so many friends that I have known through the years and have meant so much to me. Many of my friends have made that last flight, but those of you who are here tonight in honor of me, I am most appreciative, because this is a very important night to me and will always be a part of my memories. In a more jocular note, I had a call yesterday from Matt Chee. Some of you may remember Matt Chee. Matt is now a captain on the 767 with Air Canada. Matt was an instructor of mine a number of years ago. Matt, we got reminiscing on the phone, and he mentioned how I had fired him several years ago. And I didn't take a lot of joy in firing anybody, but there was a few that I fired. And neither Matt or I can remember what I fired him for. But I know he wrote me a letter after he was fired and told me it was the best thing ever happened to me. He wanted to thank me. Apparently, though, it couldn't have been very serious, because I hired him back 48 hours later. Then there's a story about Corky Wood, and Corky's not here, because I can speak about him. And if he tries to sue me, I'll deny it. Corky had the weekends off, and he was supposed to be back to duty on Monday morning, and then he missed several Monday mornings. And I agonized one night, never slept a wink, because it was a very unpleasant thing for me to have to fire somebody. Believe it or not, Mike and Larry. Anyway, Corky came into my office next morning, and I said, "Corky, you leave me no alternative." I said, "I've got to fire you." Corky said, "That's okay, Don." He said, "I'm just amazed you didn't fire me long ago." We made it very easy. Yesterday, Graham Ogilvy, who's worked so hard on this endeavor, and if I speak about firing somebody, mind you, we got to always remember that these young men that came to our school were kids. They were 18, 19, so on. We expected sometimes too much of them. Anyway, a man who's been a great success in life since then, I fired. Can I mention his name? Where is he? Oh, there he is. Graham Ogilvy. Graham told me yesterday he took the day off. He runs a business. It was very costly to take the day off. I remember one day he came down off a flight. He was one of our instructors. And he had to go to the crab house, put it mildly, put it gently, daintily. Anyway, after he'd been in there 10 minutes, I'm thumping on the door, want to know, it's taking too long. The
airplane's cooling off on the ground. So I'm thumping on the door, and finally he does come out, and so you know it's pretty serious when a man can't even go to the washroom. But anyway, Graham, I don't want to. What did I fire you for, Graham? I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, anyway, Graham took the day off yesterday to work on this project, and I thanked him because, you know, thinking how cruel I was not allowing him 10 minutes to go to the crapper. Anyway, Graham, I appreciate it. You've outlived that. I think did I hire you back? Then Elmer McGilvery's here tonight. Elmer, where are you? Boy, Elmer, I don't know what I fired you for either. But Elmer's gone on to great success, so it looks like when I fired people, I made an awful bad mistake. But anyway, Elmer's here, and we were at a group of us, including Graham and Elmer, and I don't know, a couple other guys I guess I'd fired. And we were at the Lafayette Tavern one night. That's before this organization got into those stripper things. And so we were talking about you know, here I think it was 6 of us there that night. 3 of them I'd fired, and we're having a great time. We're reminiscing, and we're buddy, and it was wonderful. Anyway, I guess the consensus of that whole situation is I made some terrible mistakes in firing. I guess it's time to end my little talk, and I'm just going to quote a few lines in a serious nature from a beautiful poem. It's always had an unknown author that greatly sums up the final chapter of an airman's life. When you've flown enough years to have seen many hills and valleys, and have known much loneliness and many uncertainties, why then you're a pilot. And on the walls of your memory are hung such frescoes as no other breed of man can ever see. And because of this, you can never grow too old or be too much afraid of what lies ahead. Have fun for the rest of the evening, and I will still hope to have an opportunity to talk with all of you that I haven't had a chance to talk to previous to tonight. It's been a wonderful evening. I compliment the people who, and particularly Edgar, my dear friend, for this beautiful evening. It's been wonderful. This kid we just saw was worth the price of admission. Thank you.
Donald Stewart McClure. Donald Stewart McClure. Born in Moncton, New Brunswick on January 5, 1923, Donald Stewart McClure's aviation career began in 1940 when he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force, the RCAF. Upon completion of elementary training at the Moncton Flying Club, he moved on to Camp Borden, where he earned his wings in November 1940. After barnstorming and gypsy moths at Moncton during the early days of World War II, McClure re-enlisted in the RCAF in 1942, moving to No. 10 Air Observer School in Chatham, New Brunswick, and later to Neepawa, Manitoba, as staff pilot under the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, the BCATP. As his skills were urgently needed in the BCATP, his several requests for overseas and ferry duties were denied. After his discharge from the RCAF in March 1945, he immediately enlisted with the Fleet Air Arm, hoping it would lead to overseas duty. But the war ended before he reached an overseas theater. He was finally discharged from the armed forces in September 1945. From 1945 to 1953, McClure worked as a freelance commercial pilot. Among his many duties, he ferried aircraft all over North America and worked in sales. In 1953, McClure began instructing at the Moncton Flying Club, the MFC, becoming chief flying instructor and general manager there in 1959. He turned an indebted, outdated club into one of the most successful flight training institutions in Canada. Recognizing that the local student pilot pool was too small, he was instrumental in broadening the club's reputation as a top flight training center. Very early on, he recognized the value of recruiting international students to train in Canada. He began an advertising campaign that targeted potential students in such countries as the West Indies, the United Kingdom, Nigeria, Pakistan, India, and Nepal, among others. He personally recruited students in many of these countries. Despite a devastating fire in 1965, McClure had the Moncton Flying Club up and running again in 2 days. He lobbied for college status for the MFC, achieving this goal in 1997 with the introduction of a 2-year diploma. It then became the Moncton Flight College. In 1999, McClure accepted the presidency of the Moncton Flight College. The awards he received for his work exemplify McClure's success as manager of the Moncton Flying Club. One of his greatest accomplishments is receiving the Yorath Trophy an unprecedented 16 times between 1961 and 1982. 9 of those awards were presented consecutively. D.K. Yorath, Hall of Fame member, 1974. The Yorath Trophy, awarded annually by the Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association, RCFCA, was presented to a flying club manager in recognition of excellence in the management of flight training programs. The trophy was retired in 1982 and is presently housed at Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. In 1981, McClure received the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Award from the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association, COPA, Belt of Orion, 1993, as the Canadian who had contributed most to general aviation in that year. In 1984, he was awarded the Paul Tissandier Diploma by the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. He traveled to Prague, Czechoslovakia to receive this award for his contribution to aviation education in Canada and throughout the world. The RCFCA presented McClure with the WP Paris Diploma in 1985. He was the first to win this award, given for his outstanding contribution to the flight training industry in Canada. In 1986, McClure was awarded the Distinguished Service Award for his outstanding contributions to Canadian aviation by the Royal Canadian Air Force Association, RCAF-A, the association's highest honor. He was also honored by Air Bras d'Or of Nova Scotia for his services to Canadian aviation. His retirement in 1989 from the Moncton Flying Club coincided with his appointment as Vice President of the Air Cadet League of Canada. McClure has served for many years with the League and held many posts, including Chairman of the National Flying Committee, as well as National Director, Provincial Director, and Vice Chairman. His activities range from policy development to aviation safety and training. In 1984, he was awarded the Air Cadet League Certificate of Honor in recognition of his outstanding service to the Air Cadet League. In 1989, he was presented with the Award of Excellence by the National Transportation Association of Canada and made an honorary life member of the Air Transport Association of Canada. In 1990, the City of Moncton named him an honorary citizen. From 1990 to 1993, he served as a member of the Civil Aviation Tribunal on appointment by the Governor-General of Canada. In 1993, he was awarded the Canadian Commemorative Medal in recognition of his contribution to Canadian aviation. He also served on the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee. McClure continues to promote Canada's aviation heritage. Some of his past activities include leading a formation of 27 aircraft across Canada in 1970 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the first cross-Canada flight, completed in October 1920 in 49 hours 7 minutes flying time by the Canadian Air Force. He became president of the Canadian Aviation Historical Society Turnbull Chapter in 1999 after serving 3 years as vice president. He remains active in the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association, COPA, and is a founding member of the Atlantic Aviation Museum. Donald Stewart McClure's aviation career spans more than 60 years. Throughout his long and impressive career, McClure has logged over 18,000 hours and flown over 55 different types of aircraft. He resides in Shediac, New Brunswick. His outstanding dedication to the advancement of flight training, coupled with his tireless efforts to teach and inspire the youth of Canada through the Air Cadet League, have been of major benefit to Canadians.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Certainly a great pleasure for me to be here this evening, and I bring you greetings from our Mayor, Brian Murphy, and my colleagues in McClure City Council. And it's certainly a great pleasure to be here this evening to honor Mr. McClure, Don McClure. And by the way, Don, I just got in the door when your sins were being read off there, and you were being forgiven, and that spiritual leader looked awfully familiar to me. This is indeed a most important event for Greater Moncton. Mr. McClure's dedication to and the development of the aviation industry has been instrumental in our community. He has been involved since the beginning of Moncton's aviation journey and continues to be a strong contributor to the region. Mr. McClure, we're delighted that you've been recognized for your lifelong efforts. This recognition comes from the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame. The City of Moncton and its residents are extremely proud of you and of your nationally recognized achievements. And I am pleased to be here this evening to take part in recognizing your accomplishments. In closing, I would like to offer my sincere congratulations on behalf of the City of Moncton. This is not only for your induction into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame, but also for a life filled with so many achievements. All of us gathered here this evening are here to honor you, to demonstrate our support and offer our heartfelt congratulations to you. Cheers, Don. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I'd like to call upon the Deputy Mayor of Dieppe, Jake LeBlanc, please.
Yeah, we bring you greetings on behalf of Mayor McClure and all the council and citizens of the town of Dieppe. Ça porte le mieux de la part du maire du conseil des citoyennes et citoyens de la ville de Dieppe. Don certainly has a relationship going back with the town way back to the 1940s at the old Desir Corners Airport. I think he even leased it, I think, going back there at one time. He was the owner. And he's still very active today. He's working with the town to, I guess, have a commemorative plaque installed, or a monument at the old Desir's Corner Airfield to commemorate that. and also other projects of that nature that he's working with us. Again, we'd like to congratulate Don. He's a classy guy, a great Canadian, a great aviator, a manager, and a great Canadian. Congratulations, Don.
Thank you very much, sir. And now I'd like to introduce Colonel Bud Bernstein, Commanding Officer of the Air Cadet Regional Gliding School. Come forward, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not near as old as Don McClure, but I've been around for quite a long time, and this gentleman has been an inspiration to me. Over the last number of years, he is a member of the Moncton Flying Club, Flying School, Moncton Flight College, but more importantly, is a member of the Air Cadet League of Canada, New Brunswick Provincial Committee. We've sat side by side on many occasions interviewing young citizens who will now get their pilot license courtesy of the Air Cadet League and the Department of National Defense through the Moncton Flight College. And I see Mike Warren there trying to get his goddamn camera going, and I hope he's not running this flying club for anyway. It's been a great inspiration for me to be associated with this gentleman. We sat side by side for the last number of years interviewing young ladies and gentlemen who are going to take their place in the aviation world, and it's always impressed me to see the admiration and the interest that he has in promoting these young folks to get into the aviation world. I thought maybe he was promoting the Moncton Flight College, but I know for a fact he's truly interested in people getting involved with aviation. I'm part of the Atlantic Region Gliding School, who also looks after the flying scholarships. I would like to present on behalf of the Regional Gliding School a little, not a certificate, but a little memento of our appreciation for Don McClure. Come up, Don, please take this. Thank you very much. I'd like to now introduce Mr. Ed Statham, Vice Chairman, New Brunswick Air Cadet League.
Well done. I got two presentations today. The first one, as you know, we in the Air Cadet League have been notoriously slow in recognizing our own. In fact, the National Office only recognizes 50 years. Well, New Brunswick went up to Ottawa and said, we want to recognize our members by having a medal. They said, no, you can't do that. So New Brunswick says, yes, we can, we're going to do it ourselves. Well, anyway, Don, we've got this medal cast, and we had to change the design twice, as you probably know, because after we designed it, Newfoundland, PEI, Nova Scotia, and then Quebec came on side. So now on the, I have a medal here that has the old outline of Canada, just in case the rest of the country wants to join us. Don, you've given over 45 years of your life to Air Cadets, to the youth of Canada, and to the youth of New Brunswick. Your experience and knowledge has been a resource that I have drawn on over the years. You have taught me a lot about Air Cadets. Air Cadets is the best organization in the world. If you remember last year in St. John, the National Commander of the Civil Air Patrol from the United States stated that most of their policies are copied from our policies. Policies that you developed yourself. It is the Don McClures and the Ruth Sabrins and the Bud Burnsons and the Norman LeBlancs of this country that make Air Cadets the best organization in the country. So therefore, Don, it gives me great pleasure to present you with this long service medal on behalf of the New Brunswick Air Cadet League. I forgot to mention, Don, that because you've got 45 years, you're supposed to have a bar for every 10 years, but you've had enough of bars, both in them and behind them when you're in Libya on vacation. So Don, if you'd like to come forward, I'd like to give you this medal. Don't go away, Don. If you remember when we were driving back from Gagetown, when we were doing the selections for the summer courses, the flying scholarships and the gliding scholarships, you were talking about the great party that was coming up. Well, I got to thinking about this, and I called the national office in Ottawa, and I spoke to Stephen Clark, and I said, look, you know, this guy's done a lot of gas. Is there anything we can do? So Stephen called me back and he said, yeah, I'm going to give him something. So anyway, you know how the office kind of takes the sweet old time. Anyway, I called Stephen back and he says, yeah, we're going to give him a presidential citation. They asked me to mention that he said, we would like you to mention the excellent work that Don has contributed to our flying program over the years. The website mentioned a lot of the work Don has done, but we would like to emphasize the work Don did when the League purchased the tow planes and gliders back when you were the chair back in the 70s, the flying committee chair. We have grown tremendously with the guidance of Don in our flying program, and many airline pilots and military pilots started as air cadets, and some have Don to thank for that. Don, and on behalf of our national president, Gilles Courrier, who I must add that at this very moment is in Niagara Falls at our annual convention, I would like to present this presidential citation, and it reads, Presidential citation presented to Donald S. McClure for a lifetime of dedication and support to the Air Cadet League of Canada, particularly the Air Cadet Flying Program, 2002.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Frank McClure, Chairman of the Board, Atlantic Aviation Museum.
Thank you very much. We all seem to be a little shorter here. Anyway, a week ago I was in the Toronto area.
Use the mic.
That's a better height. A week ago I was in the Toronto area and I had the pleasure of spending a few hours with George Neal. George, many of you will know or recall, was the retired chief pilot from the Huffman, Canada, who has known Don for many years. George was a colleague of Don's during the war years at number 10 Air Observer School in Chatham, where Don was one of the staff pilots who, in all those difficult and sometimes very dangerous circumstances, made that operation the great success it was. And speaking of his induction in the Hall of Fame, George made a comment about Don in those days that is well worth repeating. He referred to him as an exceptional person who always did his job extremely well. I'm sure that's a comment that could have been repeated many times through the years. The Atlantic Canada Aviation Museum, and Don was a founding member, I should say, of the museum, recognize the contribution that Don McClure has made to the development of aviation in this region. And they have asked me to present this plaque to Don, which reads, "The Atlantic Canada Aviation Museum congratulates Don McClure on his induction into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to the development of aviation in Atlantic Canada, the museum will maintain a permanent display honoring his many achievements."
Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Rob Robichaud, the CEO of the Greater Moncton Airport Authority.
Thank you very much. Don, from what I've seen here tonight and all the roasting that's gone on, I may well be your only friend here. Truly though, although I've only known you a short time, your reputation preceded you. As one fellow aviator to another, and having spent all the time in the military, I've heard stories about Don McClure. When people would ask me, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "Moncton." They said, "Oh, do you know Don McClure?" And I kept asking myself, "Who is this guy?" And they said, "Oh, he's really hard to dislike." And one little guy one day said to me, "Yeah, but if you work at it, it's really well worth the effort." But all kidding aside, Don, there's a bit of irony in the fact that I'm up here this evening, and that Don, actually it goes back to Mike. Dorian called me one day and said, "Look, we really want to do something for Don McClure. Can you name a street after him?" Well, I said, all the streets are named on the old side of the airport. You wouldn't want to do that. And on the new side, I really had to work with the town of Dieppe, and we had to work together and come up with the name of the one street now that we currently have that's running through the entire park. The only other one that we had was a cul-de-sac. And I didn't think the Don McClure cul-de-sac was going to really be. As luck would have it, I was called by Don and asked to have a meeting as part of the Historical Society. We sat down and Don started to elaborate on what in fact he was looking at with respect to aviation heritage and so on and so forth. In terms of the new terminal building, which I'm sure you're all aware we are building a new terminal building in Dieppe. I see Chaz Clemens sitting there. And anyway, as I was sitting talking to Don, and he was getting very excited about all of the things that he could do and display and so on, I was getting equally excited because I had something fermenting in my mind, and immediately went back to Mike at the end of the meeting. And of course, there's an old saying, if you want 3 decisions, ask 2 pilots. And after much machinations, we finally decided that there was something we could do, and it would be something that would be lasting, and it would be something I think symbolic. Don, the new terminal building is on the site of the old Moncton Flying Club, where the fire was set. Where the fire took place. So we thought what we would do in the new terminal building is, of course, allocate a place where we could display memorabilia depicting the aviation heritage of the community and the area, of which you were a big part. But further to that, we decided that we'd like to do something special for you. So as a result of that, I'm going to ask Edgar to come over. We're going to display, now the bad news is, the sign is so bloody big, the space, you can't put anything in it. But actually, we're going to name our small portion of the museum, so your friends, family, and visitors can see what you've done for us. So, thank you, Don.
Ladies and gentlemen, that ends the formal part of the evening, so it ends, you're having to put up with me for the rest of the evening anyway. We're going to take about 5 or 10 minutes to set up, and then we'll have a live Newfoundland music session with Curtis Cooper and Tom Murphy. And I would like to just add, Don, my congratulations to you. It has been a great pleasure for me to be a small part of your evening this evening. So thank you all very much for putting up with me.